On January 20th, 2020, the city of Canandaigua, New York celebrated the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in an annual event hosted by the First Congregational Church. Students, teachers, and administrators from Canandaigua schools participated. Academy students gave a dramatic reading of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. The elementary school choral group performed several freedom songs, and winners of the elementary school poster contest in grades 2 through 5 were awarded cash prizes. Their artwork was displayed throughout the sanctuary. The community choir, under the direction of Edie Rice and accompanied on organ by Denise Morphy, performed Precious Lord, Take My Hand, Dr. King's favorite hymn. Following the event, a free light lunch was served to all who attended. With the exception of freezing weather conditions in 2019, the city of Canandaigua has supported and participated in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration for the past 20 years without interruption. This year, circumstances are dramatically different due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has gripped our region and the nation. In an effort to keep everyone safe and in observance of statewide restrictions on large gatherings, the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Planning Committee, with the support of the Mayor's Office, made the difficult decision to cancel the January 17, 2022 celebration. Today we ask that you take a moment to reflect on Dr. King's philosophy of peace, brotherhood, and sisterhood, and the dream of the beloved community. We are all in this together, and together we are stronger than any challenge. We have prepared the following video and slide presentation of the celebration in place of the annual gathering. Please enjoy Canandaigua's celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Monday, January 17, 2022.
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Fredericks Malone, and I am a member of the Martin Luther King Day Celebration Planning Committee in Canandaigua, New York. Welcome to the 22nd annual celebration. If you are watching this presentation, you are in for a treat. Our opening montage was accompanied by Canandaigua Academy's jazz band, conducted by Greg Kane. Thank you. Student musicians, thank you, Greg, for a fine job. In preparation for today's ceremony, I did a little reflecting on the ceremonies over the past few years. The pandemic has changed our annual celebration from an in-person gathering at First Congregational Church that included elementary, middle, and high school students participating in the ceremony, to now this video presentation. One person that we have to thank for always bringing to life Dr. King's message is Scott Schauman. Scott has directed the Academy students in presenting Dr. King's speeches and quotes for a number of years. This year, when the committee realized that the pandemic would prevent the annual celebration from again taking place in person, Scott pivoted and improvised to create, with Greg Kane, the outstanding presentation you are about to see. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Greg. Scott Schauman has directed CA students in the city of Canandaigua's Martin Luther King Day celebration for more than 12 years. It saddens me to say this, but 2022 will be his last year. Scott is retiring in June. Thank you, Scott, for your years of service to this community and to this program. I would be remiss if I did not also thank Erin, his wife. Thank you, Erin, for your understanding. Without further ado, let us now listen to Canandaigua Academy students under the direction of Scott Schauman as they present Megan Palmer's winning essay and Letter from Birmingham Jail by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
The following introduction and conclusion is by Megan Palmer in her written response for Martin Luther King Scholarship for graduating seniors in 2017. Her response was selected as the winning entry. It is the decision of the MLK committee that her response and focus on Mr. King's letter from Birmingham Jail is both appropriate and timely for today's celebration.
Martin Luther King Jr. gave his most known speech, I Have a Dream, in 1963. His speech demanding equality was crucial in U.S. history because it gained incredible support for desegregation. His words that affected me the most were not spoken to that crowd of thousands or with TV crews and the world watching. Instead, I was affected by a written response alone in jail in the margins of a newspaper.
King delivered his letter from a Birmingham jail in 1964, 1 year after his famous speech. The police arrested King for participating in sit-ins, and he spent 11 days in a jail cell. Despite having a well-known speech for equality, King and other African Americans were still treated with little dignity. Thus, King lived in squalor for 11 days. The fight for equality was gaining many followers, but making little progress, so King wrote this famous letter.
Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham Jail, April 16th, 1963. My dear fellow clergymen.
While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill, and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be a patient and reasonable terms.
I'm cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds.
Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of police brutality is known in every section of the country. Its unjust treatment of Negroes in the courts is a notorious reality. There have been more unsolved bombings of Negro homes and churches in Birmingham than in any city in this nation.
These are hard, brutal, and unbelievable facts. On the basis of these conditions, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers. But the political leaders consistently refused to engage in good faith and negotiation.
Then came the opportunity last September to talk with some of the leaders of the economic community. In these negotiating sessions, certain promises were made by merchants, such as the promise to remove the humiliating racial signs from the stores. On the basis of these promises, we agreed to call a moratorium on any type of demonstrations.
As the weeks and months unfolded, we realized that we were the victims of a broken promise. The signs remained. As in so many experiences in the past, we were confronted with blasted hopes, and the dark shadow of a deep disappointment settled upon us.
So we had no alternative except that of preparing for direct action, whereby we would present our very bodies as a means of laying our case before the conscience of the local and national community. We were not unmindful of the difficulties involved.
You may well ask,
Why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, etc.? Isn't negotiation a better path?
you are exactly right in your call for negotiation. Indeed, this is the purpose of direct action. Nonviolent, direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront that issue.
We see the need for nonviolent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood.
My friends, I must say to you that we have not made a single gain in civil rights without legal and nonviolent pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily.
We know through painful experiences that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have never yet engaged in a direct action movement that was well-timed according to the timetable of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation.
For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. It has been a tranquilizer, relieving the emotional stress for a minute, but only to give birth to frustration.
We must come to see that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say wait.
But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim,
When you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, brutalize, and even kill your black brothers and sisters with impunity.
When you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society.
When you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the amusement park that has just been advertised on television. and see the tears welling up in her little eyes when she's told that Fun Town is closed to colored children, and see the depressing clouds of inferiority begin to form in her little mental sky, and see her begin to distort her little personality by unconsciously developing a bitterness toward white people.
When you have to concoct an answer for your 5-year-old son who is asking in agonizing pathos, "Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean?"
When your first name becomes the N-word and your middle name becomes boy, however old you are, and when your wife and mother are never given the respected title of Mrs.
When you are harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro, living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and plagued with the inner fears and outer resentments.
When you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait.
There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into an abyss of injustice where they experience the bleakness of corroding despair. I hope you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience.
In no sense do I advocate evading or defying the law, as would the rabid segregationist. That would lead to anarchy. One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty.
I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust, and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice, is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law.
We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. So it was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that, had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers. If today I lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would openly advocate disobeying that country's anti-religious laws.
I must make 2 honest confessions to you. First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice.
Who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice.
Who constantly says, "I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action."
Who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom.
Who lives by the myth of time and who constantly advises a Negro to wait until more convenient season.
Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection.
Second, the Negro has many pent-up resentments and latent frustrations. He has to get them out. So let him march sometime. Let him have his prayer pilgrimages to the City Hall. Understand why he must have sit-ins and freedom rides. If his repressed emotions do not come out in these non-violent ways, they will come out in ominous expressions of violence.
This is not a threat. It is a fact of history. So I have not said to my people, "Get rid of your discontent." But I've tried to say that this normal and healthy discontent can be channeled through the creative outlet of nonviolent direct action.
In spite of my shattered dreams of the past, I came here with the hope that you would see the just of our cause and with deep moral concern serve as a channel through which our just grievances could get through the power structure. I had hoped that each of you would understand, But again, I had been disappointed.
I have heard numerous religious leaders call upon their worshipers to comply with a desegregation decision because it is the law. But I have longed to hear white ministers declare, "Follow this decree because integration is morally right and the Negro is your brother."
In the midst of blatant injustices inflicted upon the Negro, I have watched you stand on the sideline and merely mouth pious and sanctimonious trivialities.
In the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation of racial and economic injustice, I have heard so many of you say, those are social issues with which the gospel has no real concern.
I hope that this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each one of you. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all of their scintillating beauty.
Yours, for the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr.
Megan Palmer closed her paper with these words.
With all the injustices we see today, it is easy to lose faith. If we lose this faith for a brighter future, then we are letting the other side win. Thankfully, in the past and now, we push to make the law protect all its people. In order to make America the land of the free, we must defy unjust laws, not only as an American, but as a human with morals. Martin Luther King Jr., in his journey for equality, defied rules in a country where freedom was promised. It is up to us to do the same now.